All right, so yes, another Gladly Global podcast that we're recording today. My name is Kodi Blaine. Welcome to another Gladly Global podcast episode. I am a Gladly Global team member who helps with social media. I write sometimes for the blog and, do little stuff here or there. I am currently based in France, somewhere in France, but I'm in Jamaica right now for the summer. And I study French and Korean actively right now, and then sometimes I'll dabble in other things. Today I have with me Rushane Bailey. Rushane, please introduce yourself.
Hello everyone, nice to meet you all. As Kodi said, I am Rushane Bailey, and the languages I study are Spanish and French. I've been in France too, just as Kodi said. I should be going back in about October or maybe September. And I think that studying languages is a wonderful thing. So we're just going to be talking about that today.
Yes. All right. So now Rushane and I have been friends for a couple years. We actually met at university in the French program at the University of the West Indies. And that's going to be a fantastic segue into our theme for today's podcast episode. We're actually going to be talking about studying French in university. Wow! Clap, 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 clap. Now, this is a cool topic to talk about, obviously. Having more perspective as a language learner is always valuable. But also, the Gladly Global Discord community actually voted to hear this podcast theme. So excited about that as well. Please make sure to participate within our Discord server, where you can actually pick the content that you get to see from us, and get to be a bit more involved in everything. So, right. So talking about learning French in university, we know that learning a language in a classroom setting can be very different from self-studying, right? And I feel like in the language community online, we kind of emphasize self-studying, and kind of maybe look at school structured studying as kind of old-fashioned in some ways, but there can be a lot of benefit to it. There are people who really benefit from having that structure a lot, and that benefit will go straight up to the university level, where we get into some very specialized learning for languages. So I guess the first question I'll ask Rushane, you mentioned that you studied Spanish and French. First of all, why languages in the first place?
Okay, when I just started doing languages, that was about when I was in first form. I was 12. That's when I started.
First form as for those who are not Jamaican. In Jamaica, high school starts at grade 7, otherwise known as first form.
At that time, I think I was 12, so we could do with the age then if it's a bit difficult. So I was 12 when I started Spanish and French, and I think that's where my love for it sparked. I think they said that I was pretty good at languages, and I think that was the case. I was probably not as interested as I should have been in the languages, but getting good grades was a plus. So because I wanted to make my teachers love me more, because, when you get good grades, your teachers will love you. So they liked me, and I was like, okay, I need to keep this up. So I kept doing well in the languages. Those were my highest averages ever in high school. And
wow.
I think that's where my love for the languages started. And
so you did both?
Yes, I did both from grade 7. That's when I started both.
That's so cool.
Yes. That was the initiation process for both languages.
So for my journey, I think that I was exposed a little bit to languages in prep school, but not in any serious way. So I was exposed to like Spanish. Spanish is what you're going to see common in
Yes.
our region. And then maybe like a little extracurricular hour of French once. But my actual first interaction with intentionally studying and learning a language was similar to Rushane in my first year of high school, when I was around 12 or so. And funny enough, I chose French because we had a choice between Spanish or French, and I chose French. and I wasn't actually very engaged in it. I chose it because I thought it was interesting and I kind of wanted to be different. My mother and my sister, my older sister, had studied Spanish, and also I had been exposed to Spanish a bit before, and I didn't really take a liking to it in those contexts. So I was like, let me try French. And I actually liked it. I found it very interesting. But I feel like, especially at that time in my like life, I wasn't a very good studier. I was kind of, one of those people who kind of just was like, their bare minimum just happened to be enough to like pass through things or like even seem a little bright or whatever. So I wasn't actually actively engaged in studying.
It's the same here. I didn't care about studying. I just knew that, I don't know if I had a gift or something, but I didn't study for my first 3 years of high school.
Right, exactly. I had some really bad awakenings with that once. There's a story that I've said during Gladly Global meetings sometimes, but there was actually a time when I went into a French oral exam, and there was a question where the teacher asked, it literally translated, the question would be like, "How is your mother?" But you're actually supposed to describe her or something like that, right? And so the teacher asked the question, and I responded, "Oh, she's fine," and the teacher literally started laughing at me. She could not hold it in. It was just bad. Or I failed an exam once because I kind of not an exam, a test. I failed a test once because I kind of breezed through it, and I was like, "Was that easy? That's way easy." Then, like 5 minutes before the test was over, I realized that I actually messed up. I confused two conjugation styles. So not paying attention got me into a bunch of trouble there. But I think, and I think that attitude kind of continued all throughout high school, and how I ended up in the French university program was a bit of a buck up. But before I go into that, so Rushane, you mentioned that you studied French and Spanish in high school. That's where your love of languages started.
Yes.
You did a Spanish major first or a French major first? Which was it?
That's at UE, at the university level?
Yeah, at University of West Indies, yeah.
Well, I actually wanted to do a double major. So I started, it's kind of crazy. I don't know, these stories are crazy. I started with a double major, so I started with a double major in Spanish and French. The first time I went to class, I think you were there. I think we had literature first.
Did we?
So we had a Spanish course in language and a Spanish course in literature. In French, it was the same. I went to the lit class, and I think it was very difficult. I didn't understand anything that was going on.
I remember that. Yes.
So, so what I had to do was to say to myself, do I want to do a double major and not finish university in 3 years, which I should finish in 3 years? Or do I want to do something that's better for me? Well, maybe not better for me, but better for my pocket, so I don't spend more than 3 years at university. So I stopped doing French literature, which would lead me into only doing a Spanish major and a French minor.
Interesting.
So that's how it went.
Okay, so first of all, I remember that first class, that first literature class. For context, guys, coming in, you're supposed to have a level of like at least the highest high school level of French coming into the first year French courses. And I guess the same for Spanish as well.
Yes.
And our French teacher, she did not speak any English in that class. It was just French, and we were talking about films and literature. And so it was a lot of new vocabulary that we had not been exposed to before. So it was a big learning curve. I remember if I didn't look at her lips as they were moving, I would not understand anything at all. And even then, it was really hard. So kudos to us.
But one thing, though, I regret not having done a double major.
Yeah?
Looking back, I'm like, I could have been able to do this, but I didn't.
Why would it have taken more than 3 years?
I don't know. I was afraid. I was just scared. I wasn't confident in myself. I didn't think I had enough French in my bones to do that. So I decided to get the easy way out, which was by doing a minor.
I almost had the exact opposite stumbling into things, because I ended up taking French because we needed to do a language course, and I was a bit of an overachiever in looking at my university course from the beginning. I was like, I definitely want to double major in something because I'm thinking, make the best use of the time or whatever, just like the thought that you had. And it wasn't gonna be French at first though. I just remember that we started French and I ended up really liking it. I felt like I kind of cheated my way into the program because in a lot of ways my French basics were not up to par, like because as I said, high school was not active studying for me. I kind of just coasted through. So they actually wanted to put me in intermediate, but then I came into the first year class and I realized that no one else knew what they were doing and I didn't know what I was doing. So that means I must belong.
Exactly.
Right. So that's how I started it. And what pissed me off, because at first I was like, okay, let me just, my chest too high. Let me just do a minor. Then I realized that to do a minor, you had to do all of the first year prerequisites anyway. I was like, what? So basically it took up all my time, all my extra space in my my degree because I was doing literature. And then when I looked into it, it was like, the major was like 3 more courses than the minor. And I was like, nah, man, nah. I can't just give up all my free electives and then, stop short. So that's how I ended up taking on the major. In some ways, it obviously had value because, I ended up getting that second major at the end of it. But there are ways that it was very stressful. So even though you're saying now, Rushane, that, you kind of wish you had pulled through. I mean, you still have the experience. You still have it on your transcript. It's evident, that you're very proficient.
And I still got to be in your class.
Right, and you just might have saved yourself some stress. But we'll get into that, whether or not we found the program worth it or not. Before we get there, though, I want to ask, how did your family react? So that's actually a question that one of our Gladly Global Discord server members asked.
Yes.
We reached out in the group and asked if anyone had any particular experiences they wanted to hear about or any perspectives, and this is one of them. So how did your family react when you decided to go into languages?
Let me just give you a precursor to that. I was a science student. So I did
Wow.
I did chemistry, physics, bio, and all of those crazy stuff. Geography. Yeah. So I was in the science class. They separate us, sciences, business, arts. I didn't go to the arts class. I went to the sciences class. And at the end of high school, I said to myself, okay, I'm going to apply to do medicine. But
Medicine?
Yes.
How the hell did he end up in France? Okay, go on, continue.
But I guess I wasn't smart enough, I believe, in the sciences. So I didn't get accepted to do medicine at the university. So what I did was to reapply to do Spanish and French through my department. I spoke to my Spanish teacher from high school and she said, of course, you don't want to waste your Spanish, because she thought I was pretty good. So you don't want to waste your Spanish. So I think you should do that double major. It might be worth it. That's how I ended up applying for it. And my parents, they wanted me to do something in the sciences. I mean, I think in Jamaica, people are just crazy. They always want
That's
you
a
to
big
choose.
deal in Jamaica, yeah.
They always want you to choose medicine. That's what most parents will want you to choose. But I wasn't qualified, and so they were shocked. They were a bit disappointed because even my first year, my mom was asking me about my medicine courses. I'm like, Mom, I'm not doing medicine. I'm doing Spanish and French.
That's wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it wasn't only my family, but the people I had around me. They thought I was going to become a doctor. I was going to be studying medicine. So I think they were a bit disappointed, and that made me feel awful.
Wow.
I actually avoided them. When I saw them, I would avoid walking past them because they would ask me stuff about school and how my medicine courses were going, and I didn't tell anybody that I was going to be doing medicine.
Wow.
So it was very rough coming out as a French as a French and Spanish student at the university level.
No, but that's no, I didn't know any of this. I've known you for years. I didn't know any of that. And it kind of gives me chills to think that you might not have been in the program if things had
Exactly.
gone a different way. I'm really glad that you were in the program, Rashane, or else we wouldn't be here talking right now. But yeah, that is intense, and I get that, family and community expectations. So, that must have been a big shift. Did they come around over the years? Because I mean, you've graduated now, you've kind of gotten the degree, you're
Yes.
kind of doing things with it, and we'll talk about those things in a bit. But yeah, so did they come around after a while?
I think that happened when I went to Spain in my second year. I think it took 2 years for them to actually realize that I was going in a different direction with my career options. And I wasn't going to be doing medicine anymore. So 2 years into my program at the university, they were like, okay, that's what you're doing. And we accept you for that.
In general, I think my family has been really supportive. Or, I mean, it's mostly my mom.
Lucky you.
My mom and, like, my very close parents, or like maybe my stepdad as well, who I discuss, but really mostly my mom, who I discuss like, life things with. And my mom has always been really supportive about our endeavors. So she's allowed us, or gives us opportunity to try a bunch of different stuff, like, try the instruments, try the dancing, try the whatever. We weren't always able to continue in all of these different things for a couple different reasons and whatever. What she tended to kind of just roll with it. So I think that, because I actually originally was supposed to go to a university in the US for theater. But then, US college is expensive. And a couple other things didn't work out. So I actually went on a gap year right before I started UE. And I did not intend to take up a French major. I didn't see myself as actually being that good at French or that passionate about it to take it up as a studying thing. But then what happened is that I was like, okay, I'm gonna apply to UWI. I'm gonna apply to the literature department, because literature is kind of like my day one thing. Like, I've always been a literature person. And so I said I was gonna do that. Parents were on board. And then French came along as well, and it was a kind of like an interesting, like, oh, you're doing French. That's so interesting. You could work with the UN. That's what everyone says. I feel like, when you're invested in languages, they think that, you can become a translator or work in the UN, or so on. And those are viable jobs as well. That can happen, but that really wasn't my perspective of things. And then I will talk about how, like, those perspectives kind of. No, I guess we can talk about it now. We mentioned earlier that we're in France, right, Rashane?
Yes.
We actually went to France on a program that we can describe later on, when we get to that point. But basically, this program was maybe the first time that, I guess, people took French seriously for me. Not that I felt invalidated or anything like that, but the idea that people were beginning to understand, like, hey, I did a whole degree in French. I am now preparing to go abroad to live in a French speaking country, conduct all my business in French, live the French lifestyle. I think that's a point where people were actually like, oh wow, you know French. And I'm like, sometimes I do. Sometimes. So I think that is kind of how it felt in my space around doing a language in uni. But what were your expectations when you started? So that was your family's expectations of you going into university. When you started it, how did it feel? What did you expect to get out of it? So on.
Honestly, I am unsure what I was thinking at the time, because for me it was kind of a last resort. I'm not of the same mentality right now, but for me it was a last resort, because I obviously did not want to be doing Spanish and French in university. I wanted to do medicine, as everybody wanted me to do. I think I was kind of brainwashed to think that while growing up. So it was very difficult. They told us what options we had. So of course there was like teaching Spanish or French. There was translation, there was interpretation, and you could work for the embassy You could work in foreign affairs and stuff like that. So I was like, okay, I could do one of those, but I still wasn't interested at the time. So I don't think I had a lot of expectations. I just knew that I was good at it and my grades wouldn't be too low and I would get a degree at the end of my study. So that's all I thought. My expectations were probably just low, sadly.
Coming into it for me, I think that because, and I still don't know what I want to do after, school actually concludes. I feel like both literature, even though I love literature, like that's actually a very big passion of mine, both literature and French were kind of the last resort for me as well, in that I had a plan that didn't go through and then this was my next option that I chose, right? And then with French in particular, I think one thing that was attractive, I didn't actually plan to, I don't know, didn't see myself actually using it in a concrete sense, but I definitely, once I became aware of the potential opportunities that doing the degree could offer me, I became interested in that, like, doing the teaching abroad program, like even for a year, I had that as an idea of like after school or whatever like that, just as an experience thing. But again, like you, I don't think I had that much expectations as, how to make a life out of this, or you don't even have to get that intense, like just how to make this useful in my day to day, So I think we would be on the same like level according to that.
Yes. I think I was just going around, as we would say, like headless chickens.
Headless chickens is correct.
Not
Bleeding
knowing.
everywhere, screaming, everything.
That was definitely it.
Right. So, you came into the course, or French specifically, and I guess French and Spanish in the sense. I think you prefer Spanish, right?
Of course, that's my major.
We'll talk about that in a second. Right. Yeah, right. I still grudge you for that, Anyway, continuing. You talked about your expectations and how low or high they were. What was the actual experience like when you came in? Did you find a second wind? Where you're like, yes, this actually might fit. What was that like?
Yes, I believe I had that moment at the end of my first year when I started working with some Colombians at the Latin American Caribbean Center. So I was a liaison officer with them, and I think getting to speak with people who are natives of that language, like their mother tongue was Spanish, felt like something that I had been longing for a very long time. So I felt at ease at home, and I said to myself in that moment, this is something I want to be doing with my life. I want to be in conversation with people who are Hispanic, or who are from French-speaking countries. That's what I said to myself. That was the light bulb moment that I had. That was when I said to myself, okay, there is something here for me, and this is what I want to do.
You mentioned that you did study abroad in Spain for a little bit. What did you have that light bulb moment before you applied to study abroad in Spain?
Yes, of course, definitely.
Oh, okay.
That study abroad happened in my second year. So my first year was when I had that light bulb moment. And yeah, I left you guys in my second semester, to study at the University of Valladolid in Spain for 5 months. Oh my God, that was like one of the best experiences ever. I'm not sure if I'm supposed to be speaking about it right now, so I'll just wait.
I mean, I guess you can. I guess it's part of the story, because you've studied this language in university, and that's where it brought you to, actual Spain. To give some context about what our program is like, basically UE works on right now 2 semesters per year. Each semester is 13 weeks. And so within the language programs, within French and Spanish, you will have language courses, and then you will have literature courses throughout your entire time at university. You will also have, in the later years, research courses. Maybe you'll have the chance to, for French, we had the chance to study business French. So you basically do a specialization course in very particular like vocabulary and like the nuances, the cultural nuances of certain spaces within France in my case, and then I guess perhaps Rushane would have been exposed to other types of courses like that in Spanish as well.
Definitely.
Right. So that it's kind of all right. So I will say personally that I think that the business French thing in the end was probably the most valuable thing I got out of that course. Not the most valuable. I wouldn't say that definitively, because French literature has actually greatly impacted my own research for literature even today. Like I quote a lot of French philosophers. Anyway, but that's besides the point. But that French business degree, like almost every time I take up my fingers to write an email or even like applying to grad school in France and stuff like that, I think, oh my gosh, I came into French business thinking that this was going to be a waste of time. I wanted to do international relations in French because for some reason I thought that would be useful to my life, you know. But then, no man, this business French thing is really the big deal. So I guess my experience overall, I found things that I didn't expect to be beneficial were in beneficial. And then also I really like the structure of it. I realized that as a language learner, I definitely like having a classroom, even though sometimes it can feel frustrating because, you know, the energy in a classroom can be so different. You know, there can be people who are more invested, people who are less invested and stuff. But I think having the structure of like even homework, even though I barely did it ever, right? Even the structure of homework or the structure of exams, or having those set times with the teacher, like conversation class, you get an hour a week or whatever, and maybe you schedule some more. I liked having that. That part of the experience I found very valuable. What did you in particular find valuable? Did we talk about that? Did we mention that in specifics, or did you talk in general about the experience?
Well, I spoke in general. Maybe more specific, seeing that I did Spanish and you didn't. I'll say something on the Spanish side. For me, it was the structure too. So we had our literature courses and we also had our language. So I know there are different ways of trying to learn a language. People have different ways, but I think the way our university did it was actually a pretty good one. I mean, you have to know literature to know a bit about the culture and about the people. It's not just the language, because speaking, I mean, almost anybody can do that, but you need to know how to react in a particular culture, and that's what literature did for us.
That's such a good point.
Yes, that's what literature did for us. And even for the film course that we did at the end for our research. Oh, that was the best course ever I did in my major. That was the best course ever. We got to see how Latin America was deemed in, let's say, the mid 1900s. It was a great moment for me. I learned about different directors, how they portrayed the Latin American society, how people in other countries saw Latin Americans, stuff like that. I mean, most of the Spanish speakers are from Latin America anyway, even though the mother country, as they say, for Spanish is Spain. But most of what we learned was based on Latin Americans, and that was very eye-opening. We learned about different accents, how the people spoke, how the people reacted in religious ways or stuff like that. It was just breathtaking. Like, looking back, I'm saying to myself, this was a very good program.
Yeah, I also appreciate our teachers a lot.
Yes.
In general, I think that is kind of the deal you get with the UE, in that we, even though we're a very prestigious university and we kind of rank internationally, we do have issues about resources sometimes across the entire campus. So where you lack in resources, I think that you have fantastic teachers. You can find some really fantastic teachers in all departments. For this literature department, I know personally, and then we had some great teachers in our in our modern languages department as well. Next question I want to ask is, have you ever studied language outside of the context of school?
I'd say no. I mean, I use language outside of school, but studying language outside of school, I have a friend who does that. She keeps telling me that she does, but I never see myself doing that. Not that I don't want to, but it feels a bit forced, a bit different. I don't want to be learning a language in a forceful way. I mean, immersion is kind of a forceful way, but you actually want it because you wouldn't be going to somebody's country if you don't want to learn their language. So immersion is a bit different from forcing yourself to retain material outside of school. So I prefer to not do that outside of school. But speaking and probably researching a few words, I'd say in a more relaxed manner, I do that. But not outside of the context of school with the heavy studying and this is used for this. No, not for me.
This is where you and I differ, in that I actually find a lot of joy in doing self-study, and that's kind of like a big part of our community here in Gadi Global. So this is not me like telling you you're wrong or anything, because obviously people have different experiences. We mentioned that earlier. But I actually like the idea of kind of dedicating yourself to a skill or a craft in a sense, in that way. And I find it very interesting because in the study community, you'll find a lot of talk about immersion. Immersion is a big goal for a lot of people because, there have the people that are like, oh, if you're immersed, you can learn a language in like a week, which is like, come on. Be realistic about. I have some balance about things, but also people mark it as that's really that space where you get your, I don't know, this is a really bad analogy. I've never been on a boat literally, but you get your sea legs, right? You get your sea legs, so you can kind of grow into fluency, grow into the culture, grow into how to think in the language and so on, right? So to hear you talk about it separate from actually actively studying is very interesting for me. Now you lived in Spain for 5 months when you were studying, and now you're currently based in France. You've just gotten back and you're planning to go back in September or October. Would you call that living in these different spaces? Would you call that as a sort of learning in itself, or is that just living for you? Like, are you conscious of yourself growing as a language learner in these spaces after school?
Yes, I deem it as a form of learning, but also living. So I say part living, part learning, because for me, I don't go to France to learn. That's not my goal, actually. It's one of the things that happen, but if I were to say, oh, I'm going to France to learn French, I would be lying. So, yeah, I go there to live, to work, and then the learning takes place because, of course, you have to communicate in that language, in the French language. You have to speak to your teachers, the students that you're teaching. You have to speak with them. So I believe that it's part learning, part living, part working. It's a holistic thing when you look at it. It's not just one.
Holistic is a good word.
It's not just one thing, as in learning. That's not what we do there.
And I really resonate with that as well, because I think that is kind of what is missing. We talk about immersion, as I mentioned. Immersion is kind of like a big goal for a lot of people, but really and truly what that's supposed to be about is learning to live in the language.
Yeah.
Right? So switching your brain from oh, I'm gonna go study now. I'm gonna take my pen and paper and open a book right now and actually think, breathe, and live in the language.
And just to interject, I think when you do that, like take a paper and a pen when you're living in a country, I think that's what makes you probably stuck, because you're forcing yourself and your brain is like, okay, you're forcing me to retain this information. I don't want to. But when you live and you freely hear expressions and you like go to a shop, say something, that's when you're more free to take on more information and to be able to speak more freely.
That kind of freaks me out. I realized. I'm not naturally gifted at speaking in, like, like I have like friends who are very quick to catch on to things or even to absorb from the environment. But I think that's why I tend to overthink things. So I'm very good at the book stuff. So I'm very good at the literature, and the writing and stuff like that. But speaking trips me up. And sometimes listening, as an extension of, conversation and interactions, because I'm thinking, I haven't gotten the hang of living quite wholly in the language. So when I talk to someone, the first thing that comes to my mind might not necessarily be a thought, but but be a stock phrase, because I've just thought of the thoughts I want to say, but then I don't have the vocabulary, and I'm like, So that kind of was one of my goals I actually had when I was going to France. Not that I was saying, oh, I'm going to France to learn French, but I was trying to get into the mode of living more freely with the language, and to chat like how I would chat in English with you. We're catching up, how have you been?
Yes.
How's your cat? Tell me about the cat. Oh, that's such a funny story about the cat, and I think I improved. I definitely improved, but of course with COVID it was kind of difficult to actually have that much, that much people to interact with.
I agree. I agree with that, because you didn't get to leave your apartment that much because lockdown. I'm thinking of the French word right now, curfews. Yeah, so lockdowns, curfews.
Right, exactly. So it was weird. So in a way, it felt like I actually had not stepped out of the self-studying mode, or the studying mode in general. We started this tangent with me asking about you studying, like, self-study versus, or studying outside of school. I felt like I almost kind of stayed within that space because I wanted very badly to make the most of my time in France in that way. I wanted to improve in the areas that I felt I was lacking in. And so I actually set up a little regiment for myself, partly as part of Glad Global. We have accountability meetings, basically where our language coaches will we meet, we talk about our goals for the week in studying or whatever, or our goals for the month, or however long we want to discuss for. And then our coaches will help give us feedback. We can, give feedback to each other and so on. So I kind of dived into that. I was very happy to dive into that because it kind of gave me that sense of structure from school, right? And so I feel like in that way things kind of mixed. So even as I'm thinking of trying to compare the university experience to those experiences, they become very similar in that way. But yeah. All right. So, moving on from talking about that, advantages and disadvantages of doing a language in university.
I don't think there are disadvantages actually.
No disadvantages.
Unless you want to do medicine and and you get right. I don't know, but I don't think there are disadvantages in my opinion after having been through that. There are many advantages, especially as it relates to traveling abroad. That's one of the main advantages that I've come across.
Okay, that is a very big advantage.
Yes, it is.
Damn. Interesting.
The first I had was, of course, in the second semester. of my second year at university, I was able to go on this Erasmus study abroad program. It was Erasmus Plus. I think it was organized by the European Union. So I was placed, as I said, in the University of Valladolid. I was there for 5 months. I actually was in Spain for 6 months, but I studied for 5 months. They gave you a stipend, so you get like 4,000 euros for 5 months, which is very good living. You get 800 euros per month. That's a lot of money.
Wow.
That's a lot of money to live with. Of course, you pay your rent and whatever you wanted out of that. That was beautiful. I got to speak more because going there, I mean, I was okay, but after going there, I felt better prepared for the world of Spanish. I was able to listen more Spanish, understand more Spanish, speak more Spanish. So I think that was one of the best opportunities. And with that, I was able to travel. So I wasn't just able to go to one country. I ended up going to several different European countries. I was actually in France.
Wow.
That time. So that was my second time. Last year was my second time in France. The first time was when I was in Valladolid.
Amazing.
So there are numerous opportunities that you can get while studying a language, and that's just one of them.
Rushane is a traveler, people. He's a traveler.
Yes.
Yeah, that is really the big advantage. You really open up the spaces for you. Even right now, looking at grad school, because I always intended to go to grad school, but I took the year off to do the French program, the TAPIF program, that we went on. That's how we ended up going to France. If you want more information on that, head to our Discord server and, participate. Tell us what you want to know and we'll let you know. But yeah, continuing from that. What was I saying? Right, yeah. Being able to travel, having those opportunities, that's a really big draw. And university it puts you in a prime space to take advantage of these advantages, I should say, because one, you're not a minor, you're most likely an adult if you're in university, and then two, universities have connections with whether it be other universities or governments, and so you can get funding or you can get assistance. So
Yes.
for our program, we didn't receive funding for our program, but we got a lot of assistance. We had people who you could ask, who were familiar with the program, who were able to guide us through the process. You get a lot of support in that way, all while doing your regular studies and stuff, and you're interacting with other people who and be able to network a lot easier within the university framework. I will say though, I do have disadvantages for university studying. One of them is that, and then this is partially because of, I think, the structure of, the semester system right now at UWI, and this is the kind of similar for a lot of colleges around the world. But I feel like, in a way, because things have become so truncated, school becomes less about learning and more about getting the grade.
Yeah.
And and having it on the resume or whatever to do whatever else with it. I feel like in a lot of ways the structure of not only the language courses but other courses isn't enough for people to actually have a full grasp and appreciation of the material they're working with, and that will in the end also affect morale in class and so on. So I think it's a beautiful thing to, and I say, that sounds so trite. It's a beautiful thing, right? To be in a class of people who are there to study a language. It becomes a bit more frustrating when you realize that the goals are not the same. Like, there are people who are not there to learn the language, and I'm not, being like, I'm not talking down on them or anything like that. But for example, for a university to put as a first year requirement that people should have to do a language requirement, right? Sure, some people start the program and they fall in love with the language, but a lot more people, I think, kind of just do it, and the entire time they're like, oh, I just gotta get this out of the way. And so I think that is that's a bad association. I don't like that association with language learning and learning in general. And so I would say that's a disadvantage, how things are kind of structured can put you off of languages as well. And then another disadvantage is, which is not really a disadvantage, but just in the grand scheme of things, it was kind of sucky to deal with. Languages take up a lot of time, and it took up a lot of university space for me as well. Perspective, everyone knows that you're supposed to like be studying like a lot of hours of in order to master anything.
Yes.
On first day orientation at University of the West Indies, they were like, each course is 3 hours per week, right? And so you're supposed to be doing 15 hours of class per week. And so you can get a part-time job or whatever. You're like, yeah, that sounds so nice. 15 hours of school, man, that's amazing. And then you find out that the language program, any language course, is literally at least 10 hours a week for beginners. Right? And so that's a lot of time right there. So instead of having 15 hours per week, you're like heading up to 20 odd hours per week of studying. And so that also, I wish there were more transparency around that as well. And again, that goes back to my issue with the structure and stuff.
Yeah. And not to mention, there are 4 skills that you have to master. So it's not just, I need to speak Spanish, so let me just go practice some speaking.
Yes.
There's speaking, there's listening, there's reading, and there's writing. There are 4 of them that you must pay equal attention to. Because if not, then you probably will be strong in maybe listening, and then you can't speak properly. So there's a lot to study, and a lot of time needs to be devoted to a language while studying a language.
Right. So all those who are considering studying a language in school, in high school even, and in university, take that into consideration. Not as a deterrent, not to say, hey, don't do this but just understand that it will take a commitment, but it's not necessarily a bad thing, because again, the advantages can be so fantastic. I know people who like have gotten jobs just from being fluent in a language, and even outside of the job world, your opportunities just kind of open up. Currently I am applying to do my master's in France at a public university, which is way cheaper than in the US, way cheaper than Canada, way cheaper than even in Jamaica, right? And Jamaica has a pretty good fee and government subsidy program for university courses. So I wouldn't be able to access something like that if I had not done French at a university level at all. So there's definitely a lot to consider in that way. Anything else you can think about, Rushane?
Yeah,
advantages, disadvantages?
I also have friends who would have gone to Spain with me, and because Spain is on the resume, then this would have helped them to land the job that they wanted. So that's very good. Like, knowing that you would have gone to a Spanish university, knowing that you were in Spain, in Europe, of course, then people want to hire because they know that you have different cultural experiences. It's not that you are stuck to your own culture. You don't only have a Jamaican culture inside your mind. You've been to other countries. You've explored a bit. And so they know that you have something new to bring to the table. And that's what companies look for when they're hiring employees. So that was a good thing to have on your resume.
Yeah. Also, I think that another advantage is that you can live a different life. And this is what I mean by that. Earlier, Rushane, you had mentioned that you did French and Spanish as kind of like a backup. And you knew that, they told you could be a translator, you could be a teacher or whatever, but you weren't really expecting much from it. But the truth of the matter is that we don't think about, because I feel like maybe we're scared or we're unable to imagine ourselves living differently from how we grew up, or our dominant culture, especially a dominant Anglophone culture. But you can just live your exact life, but in France.
Yes.
So if you are a graphic designer here in wherever country you are in, if you learn another language, you learn it well enough, and you learn about the different cultures and industries, you could also be a graphic designer in another country. You could live 1,000 different lives just from the languages that you know. So in taking it out of like a job perspective, just existing kind of you have more space, I think, or you can exist in a space more comfortably because communication, I think, being able to communicate with our environment and the people around us, I feel like that is a very big part of how we lead our lives and how we imagine we can lead our lives.
Yeah, and it's also a good form of escape. Say, for example, I don't know, you're tired of your own culture, you're tired of your society that you're living in, you don't think that you belong in that place. Learning a language could actually open a door for you to enter into another country where you might feel more accepted for who you are. You might just feel more at home, more at ease to do whatever you want in that country and in that culture.
And actually, I'm gonna double back for a little bit because I think we have another question that I wanted to cover from our Discord server. If you want to join our Gladly Global Discord server, by the way, you can check our social media. We have links to it there. Our social media handles are at Gladly Global on Twitter, at Gladly Global _ on Instagram, and then also Gladly Global has a quarterly magazine, the Polyglot magazine. You can head to our coffee page, however you pronounce that page, to check it out. And you can also follow our Instagram account for the magazine, at the Polyglot magazine. Sorry, at the Polyglot mag. But yes, another question that we had was a difference between studying languages, high school versus university. Did you feel a big jump when you made the switch, Rushane?
But of course, there's nothing. I wouldn't say there's nothing similar because, of course, you have the four skills that you need to work on. But I think high school was very simple. It was so easy to get an A+, a 98, a 96. It was so easy to get that in high school. I don't know. I think high school is a bit repetitive. So you might see the same things over and over and over again. So there's no evolution. Maybe, I mean, you're learning, but you're learning what you already know, which is probably not learning. But I mean, it set a good foundation for university. But in university, it's more rigorous, I would say. You get to explore other areas of learning, different styles of learning. All new materials are presented, and yeah, it was a big jump for me. It was very different. I told you about the French literature class that I had to just give up on French literature for that time because of how it felt to me. But in high school, French was very easy. I'm not sure why the exams were that easy at that level, but it didn't really match up to what we did in university. It's a good foundation, though. Not gonna say that that's not a good foundation, but just that it doesn't compare to what you do at university.
All right, everyone, expect the jump. Expect the jump.
Yeah, as it relates to difficulty.
Yeah. Again, I feel like I coasted through high school languages, so it definitely was a big difference. But also, in a way, not. I shadowed some of the intermediate classes when I first started French at UE, and it was very high school-esque in that I realized it became more transparent to me how focused on building blocks those courses were in high school, right? It was really just about the building blocks, which again makes it a good foundation, as you mentioned, Rushane. So in that way, if you're starting from absolute scratch at a university level, our course at UE, they had it so that you could do it in take your time and do it semester by semester, or you can do crash courses, whichever suits you better. But yes, expect the jump. There is definitely a jump. There is a jump. Next thing, do you have any regrets from doing languages in university?
No, I mean, I started languages as a last resort, but looking back, no, I don't regret doing that. And if I were to do it again, I would choose Spanish and French, maybe this time a double major. I've been to places I didn't think I was going to be ever. But with these languages, I was able to go there. I was able to live experiences of a lifetime because of these languages. So no regrets, actually. I would definitely recommend doing Spanish and French, Chinese, Japanese, whichever language you choose, Korean, as you said. Yeah, whatever language you want to do it. Do not let the people around you say, oh, you're not going to be successful because languages are not in fashion. You have to do medicine. You have to do engineering. No.
Preach!
You can do whatever you want to do with your languages.
Very inspiring. I like that a lot. Do I have any regrets? No. I think I'm the same as you. I think I feel like I've also kind of not grown out of, but I try not to look at my life from that perspective of, looking for regrets in that sense, in that everything is an experience, right? So there are experiences that are not savory, really, but I feel like, especially within the context of something like university, you do so much in university, or you're allowed to do so much. You can choose courses, electives, all sorts of stuff. I think that it was really a really good use of my time. So no regrets there. It might have been hard at some points. At some points I might have thought that I regretted it, but overall I definitely grew a lot more than I could have suffered in that program.
Definitely. I regret not having chosen French as a major. That's what I regret.
You're living in France now, so I think that trumps it, Just do your DELF exam and then just go. That's it. You don't need a degree. You just need the DELF exam. Would you recommend? I think that we kind of, covered this one, but I'll just ask it anyway. Would you recommend languages in university?
100%. 100%. I mean, the world that we're living in, it is very important that you have a second or a third language. If you only have English, that's not going to cut it. If you only have Spanish, that's not going to cut it. You need at least 2 languages to be able to survive in this world that we're cultivating for ourselves. There's no way, I think, that if you are only speaking one language, you're going to be able to survive in this world. Maybe you're going to be stuck or confined to your country and not be able to experience other experiences that there are in the world, because there's not only your culture, but other cultures to experience, other lives to live, as Kodi said before. And people to meet, of course.
Yeah, nice. I also would recommend. You've said it all, Rushane. Thank you so much for joining me for this little polyglot chat. I'm not a polyglot yet, but polyglot chat. That's actually one of our other series. Let me not, fuzz that up a bit. But yes, thank you for joining me for today. Thanks for listening. If you're listening to our podcast, again, you can participate in our Discord server to help choose what topics we talk about in all our content. So feel free to participate there. Rushane, do you have any socials that you like people to follow you at or anything like that?
Yes, definitely. You can follow me on Instagram at Saintjean, which is SAINTJEAN_RU.
Right. You can follow me on Instagram as well at Kodi_Blaine, KODI_BLAINE. You can also follow me on Twitter. You can find my Twitter from my Instagram if you're that invested. I'm a bit that's kind of like after hours. I mean, it's kind of crazy over there. Anyway, and you can also, again, follow Gladly Global on our socials at Gladly Global on Twitter, at Gladly Global _ on Instagram, at the Polyglot Magazine, and make sure to check out the growth issue, our most recent issue of the magazine, on Ko-fi or Ko-fi, however you pronounce that. Anyway, I hope you have a good day wherever you are. Hope the sun is shining, or hope it's a nice weather that you like. Hope you have some tea beside you. Stay hydrated, and enjoy your summer. All right. Bye-bye.
Goodbye.